Week 5, day 3. Welcome back to class. I hope we've been having fun. Today, we're going to use React and some JavaScript to write to an API. That just means giving an API data. If you guys think about what we've been doing so far in our previous labs, what have we been doing, guys? What are the APIs that we worked with? We worked with that's one of them. So give me another one. MovieDB.
Google News.
Did we also do Google News? Yeah, Google News. Yeah, we did that one too. Yeah. So if you guys think about the projects that we worked on so far, we've only gotten data from an API, and the vast majority of times we're going to need to do more than that. So that's what the purpose of the lab is. But first, let's do a review. These are some of the key points we did yesterday, guys. These are fundamental to React. Well, the top left one is fundamental. The other ones are some of the things that we felt that like everyone wanted to know, and we will need to get to know how to do those things. So lifting state up. Can someone say, give me an example of how we did this yesterday? How? How did we lift up state? What was one way we did that?
I'm not sure. Passing prompts using
So because we lifted up state, we did have to pass props to children. But lifting up state was the concept that certain things should not have state. Our square, when we initially started working with the square, every single square had its own state. But we should not be doing that. We should have the state lifted up, and the square should be told what to do. It should look like, depending on the status of the board. Exactly. Thank you. And then we actually took it a step further for those of us who did the entire lab. The board, because we wanted to have the ability to do other things, right, such as go back in time, we had to lift up our state further to the game component, right? That way we could do time travel, a bunch of different things, right? And the main point is that if every single one of our components tried to maintain its own state, it'd be very difficult to think about. Right now, it's already kind of difficult to think about because programming isn't easy, but this is the best way to do it. Many people over years have been thinking about this problem, and the best way to manage state is at a higher level, the vast majority of times, and to try to have as little state as possible. Yes, we need to have state. We need to create all types of variables for state in more complex issues, but we should try to minimize that. So, for the vast majority of times, we want to have a very few number of components that will have state, and then depending on that state, that component will tell other components what to do. And how do they tell other components what to do, guys? With properties, right? Remember the example yesterday, the simple example where we had 3 buttons. We had an app component. That app component in it had a child. That child took a property of color. And then whenever we updated the state of the app component, the child changed. So that's basically a review. We already talked about components not needing to have their own state. We also went into importing styles a little bit. I apologize, guys. Sometimes I mix up code styles myself. I'm also able to make mistakes. I've shown you guys a couple of ways of how we could do styling in React Native for those of you guys who want to build mobile apps. But yesterday we also did it the classical web way. And lastly, we also talked about how to extract out smaller components. We did that a couple times yesterday throughout the lab, right? Well, we only made 3 components and they were already pretty much set it up for us. But extracting is not simply just creating a new function and then saying, oh, this is now a new component. Extracting out a smaller component is making sure the behavior is correct. The board, there was a time in which during yesterday's lab where the square understood its own state, right? It understood its own state, and when the user clicked on that button, the square would update its state. But afterwards, we lifted up our state out of the square component into the board component. And that required a couple different things. We had to copy and paste some, we didn't have to copy and paste over the functions, but we probably wanted to. That was the simplest way. And we also needed to change this a couple times. Some of us made that mistake. You can't copy and paste the entire thing and expect it to work the same way because this will change, right? This will change. Where the data comes from will change. If state is managed in a child and we lift it out into the parent, well, the function is no longer from state, it's from props. Right? We did that a couple times, and this is basically the common pattern, guys. We start small with a simple example of how do we do something, and then it gets more complicated. All right, so do we have any questions from labs yesterday other than time travel? Yes.
So the whole looking at state and like props to state to props, would you just, when you're reading a project, would you go straight to state, or would you start, you know what I mean? Like, or would you go through the small step process and then go back and then change, or would you just?
So typically, I would leave everything in the parent component. This is just my way of doing it, right? And then what I like doing is I write little functions that will be responsible for just one part of the application, one post or movie card or something like that. And then when we can write out our functions, whenever we write out our functions, which let's look at a good one. Genres. Okay, so right here, we guys see that we have a render genre selection button. This is the component on the left that I had. So for my example, guys, my example over of the IMDb clone. This render genre selections button controls this component here on the left. It's not actually a component yet. It's just a function, right? But because we sequestered, there's a word here, sequestered. We separated what it took to build this over here, this on the left, our genres. Now, in my opinion, it becomes much easier to think about how this works. What is the only piece of data that this thing right now needs? We look at the top of this function, we can see that the only thing we're looking at is genres, right? So, imagine we had a genre component. What is the property that we need to pass it from the parent component? Genres, right? This is the only thing this is using. Thank you. This is the only thing that we have in this function is genres. That's the only piece of data that we need in order to make this work correctly. So I'm going to go ahead and build this. Let's just do it as a quick review. Okay? So we'll do genres equals genres. Okay? I got to stop looking at the screen when I'm typing. Okay? So now we can go ahead and do components, and we'll say a new file. We'll call genre list.js. Okay? I'm going to copy some code because I want to move quickly. Okay? I'm going to just paste all this in here. Why did that not work? Copy all this. Delete all this. Change this to genre list. Okay, that one right here. We can delete pretty much all of this. We'll delete a lot of it. God damn it, why am I fucking up here? Okay, dude, I cannot type today. Sorry, guys. Okay, that looks good. Okay, so we don't need all this. I did way too much right here. So what's the one thing we need to do right here, guys? Render. Okay, so our genre list, what's the one data that we're going to get? What is the one piece of data we get from its parent? Genres, right? So what does the genres become in the right? This dot props dot genres. Okay? So then we can do return, and then we need to do our this.props.genre, and we just copy this, man. Let's just copy the whole thing. I think this will work. Okay, so now we just go ahead and import this component, genre list. We changed our mind. Okay, we're gonna copy this import over, and we're gonna change the variable. Okay. Now I expect this to work, But, you know, it might not, so we're going to debug it together. Okay, that looks good. That looks good. Return. Okay, save, see what happens. Okay, we got an error somewhere. Okay, we need one more parentheses. We need a curly brace here, I think. This dot pops. That's genre. And then there's one more function right here, okay? Get genre ID. That seems it. Get genre count, my bad. So we can copy this function right here. So this one also needs more data. Right? But this one isn't that complicated either, guys. What's the one piece of data that we need to have here? Okay, so we can just copy this over here. I'm sorry, guys. Copy-driven development is my favorite type of programming. So instead of state, on line 9, guys, what do we have here?
Prop.
Yes, we have props. And what now? How do we need to change genre list? So in our genre list, we have a property called all movies. What needs to go differently here? All movies equals all movies. Do we have this variable defined yet on line 110? Nope. Where can we get this? Right here, right? So we save here. We save here. We have one more mistake. Okay, a button is not over here. So we'll copy this one. I think button is the only one we don't have. Okay, and I think we just took this out. Is not export. Okay, we for genre list, import. Genre list is not exported from components in genre list. Am I spelling this wrong?
I think the original patch
Oh, okay. What's the problem here, guys?
is the default.
Yes, it's the default export. So we can do it this way. Save, and everything works the same. Okay? You guys see that this works the same? I think it works the same. Okay, I fucked up one more thing. On filter. On filter. I forgot to grab out another function. Okay, so now we just copy over this function. And what does this piece of statement need? It's the same one, all movies. This.props, filtered movies. Okay, I think this will work. Okay, we save, refresh. History, it has one movie. If I click this, I expect us to see one movie here. Did I save? Save, refresh. Okay, now I know exactly what happened. You guys, who here knows what happens? Because on filter genres is setting state to the child. We need to update the parent. Okay, we need to update the parent state. The parent app component needs to be updated. So line 11 and 13 need to be refactored further. Right? So we need to do something like this. This.props. Update for genres. Okay? We're gonna call this update for genres. And then we're gonna pass it the filtered movies. Okay? So what needs to be done here, guys, on line 10? We need to give our application another prop, or our component one more prop. Okay? And what's this one gonna do? We're just gonna do an anonymous function right here. This.setState. What did it say a second ago? Movies. Yeah, movies is filtered movies. Okay? And so when this function right here, update for genres, is called with the filtered movies, the argument will go over here on the left and it will call this function. So we save. I hope this works. I think it will work. So now we have history, we click 1. So I know that was very fast, guys. That was very fast and furious. But we need to understand how props and state work together to make a cohesive program, right? And that's why I don't think the problem right now, our biggest problem is exporting to different components. I think our biggest problem right now is understanding where the data is going to come from and how to pass the prop and then and where it belongs, right? We don't need to make a bunch of different files yet. Let's just make sure we understand how to give one property to a brand new component and then use that. And then how we can use that component to update the parent, stuff like that. Okay, guys? So there, we see that how long did that take, guys, to create a new component? 5 minutes? Not very long at all. Okay?
For us,
It would take a whole day for us.
It wasn't that hard. It wasn't that hard. But the point is, I want you guys to think about, like, when you guys create functions, right? I don't want you to create functions for fun. It's gonna help you guys later on when it comes time to create components. You're gonna look at this function and then you're gonna say, what data does this function need? You know, you guys are gonna think about that and you're like, oh, okay, well, I see in this function I got this piece of state and that other piece of state, and that's what it takes to build this correctly. Okay, so moving on. Okay, how to extract out smaller components from larger ones. Sorry, guys, I got a little sidetracked. I want you guys to show you this is not magic. Okay, it just takes a little bit of thinking. Okay, so for the goal of today is to use an API in a way we haven't before. I think I already said this, but any meaningful app, okay, any meaningful app will allow you to create some type of data. Charles likes to call it write. I like thinking of it as creating data. Let's just say Facebook, okay? Let's go to Facebook. If there were no posts on Facebook, Facebook would be almost useless. Not useless. Obviously, they have a bunch of useful features, right? But let's just say I want to create a post, okay? I create a post. I'm going to have only me, okay? I'm going to have only me. And then we're going to look at our network requests. We're going to see what happens when we click this button, okay? We click this button, share. There's a bunch of requests get fired off. Facebook is actually kind of hard to demonstrate sometimes because they have so much going on. But one of these requests is going to be a post request. Where is it at? So I just made a post. I created some data right here, guys. You see on the left? Just understand from the user's perspective, they created some data. And that data was stored somewhere. I expect that if I turn off my computer and log into another computer, I should also see this post. No one here, we don't know how to do that yet. But that's what the purpose of this lab is. We're going to post data. We're going to create data. So in here, we're going to see somewhere, do you guys see where it says request method right here? Right? One of these is going to be a post. Right there. That's it. Right there. No, that's I don't know. Facebook is very highly secure. Their routes are unreadable to a human because they don't want to be hacked. They're very good at hiding their routes. And one day you guys are going to one day you guys are going to make build files. You make a production build. Okay, you might have heard of us saying that before. Are we in production yet? Have we made a new build? What that means is taking all our code. Imagine we take all this code right here, and then we run a program that deletes all the empty spaces. Okay, it deletes all the empty spaces, and then it takes all the function names that are similar, that are human readable, and it gives it an encryption. Like that. It automatically does all this for us. Do you guys see what's going on right now? I'm looking for all the things. I'm just putting garbage in here. Not garbage, but shit, I fucked up. We're just putting in a random string so that people can't hack us. We don't want people to take apart our code and be able to read and understand what the fuck's going on. If the variable names were the same, it'd be much easier to do that. And Facebook, many of the build tools that we use in the future will do this for us for free. We don't need to think about it. Okay? It will take a much more talented person to hack us after the build process. If you guys look closely at some of these files that we get, come on, I want you guys to see these files. You'll see that some of them become one long ass string. I'm talking about this string might be tens of thousands of characters long, and it's just one line. On top of encrypting this, it also just deletes all white spaces. Okay? Does that make sense? It'll just do this.
Raw data?
Say again?
Like a raw data?
It's not raw data. It's actual code. But it's formatted in such a way that it's almost impossible for a human person to be able to poke through. Do you see how you guys have seen me open up HTML and like poke around a little bit and change shit, right? And like get my password. I remember I did that on day one. We're trying to make that more difficult. That's what the objective here is with this.
It's like an API visualization.
Yeah. Okay, so I forgot where I was at. Okay, let's fix this. All right, that works. Okay, so moving on. Okay, so we're going to create data on an API. We're also going to do social media login. Okay, sign up with Facebook. That is a good user experience. Users are far more likely to forget the email and password they use on our website than on Facebook. Okay? And Facebook has done a lot of security things for us. So we want them to just click a button and they can sign in. We get their profile photo, we get their age, their email, their first name, last name. We get a bunch of data depending on how many permissions we have. Okay? Every single time we want to do a Facebook login, we need to create an account. We need to sign up for some stuff. We need to tell Facebook what we want. And depending on how thoroughly we've done this, Facebook will give us different levels of permissions to access certain data. Okay, so for today we're gonna finish tic-tac-toe. For those of us who aren't done, we're gonna write to an API and we're gonna do Facebook login. Tomorrow we're gonna do GitHub issues. That's gonna be the weekend project. Learn how to use posts. Familiarize ourselves with a common requirement. Authentication. Okay, so that's it. Let's get to it. Here you guys can see the application that we're building. Right now the user is not logged in, guys. The user is currently not logged in. So what do we see?
Login.
We see a login button. If a user is logged in, why do they need to see a login button? And if they aren't logged in, then they should see the login button. So we can click this button, a pop-up occurs, and because I'm already signed in on Facebook, Facebook did a lot of magical things for us. So let's just copy this. We'll open up an incognito window, and then we'll do the same thing. We'll do login with Facebook. Facebook did some magic for us. Now we log in. But the objective here is that a user shouldn't have to enter their email if they're logging in with Facebook. I have actually seen that happen, and I thought it was a poor design decision by the company. The company, we let users click the Facebook login button, and then afterwards we made them type in an email and then type in a password. That defeats the purpose of the Facebook login, if you ask me. Yeah, it's annoying as fuck. I wanted to not think about an email. You know, I wanted to not think about a password. You guys may run into this in the future. Your product owners will be like, oh no, our application is so important and so secure. We have to have their phone numbers. We have to authenticate that.
With the Facebook login, does it allow the company to gain access to the person's email?
So that depends. So first off, our application needs to be vetted, right? Facebook will actually look at your application sometimes, depending on what it does and what permission you ask for. They have a team of people, man. If we create a Facebook login, we sign up for an account to do a Facebook login, there's gonna be someone that looks at your app and say, all right, is this appropriate? Should we allow this? There's people that do that all day. So that is one step. The second step is if they approve that, the user will see a pop-up and says, hey, do you want to give them your email and password, blah, blah, blah. You know, they'll say this website wants access to your email and not your password, but your email, your first name, last name, birthday, etc.
So there's two approvals to get an email with using Facebook login.
Say again?
There's two approvals with Facebook using Facebook login to get the user information.
There's two what?
Two approvals, Facebook and the user.
Yeah, so like,
Like Facebook's like the middleman in a way.
Exactly. Facebook actually provides us a lot of different tools, man. If you guys have ever seen those applications that when you sign in and you enter your phone number, it text messages you a status code.
Yeah.
Facebook provides a tool that does that completely for free. So it's called Account Kit. There are many different ways there's regular Facebook login, and there's something called Account Kit. You guys will get more familiar with this. You guys, more likely than not, Facebook, we're going to get to know this API very well. and they got a whole bunch of tools. Okay, so lastly, after we log in with Facebook, guys, we need to do two different things on this application. For your guys, you're going to be doing this on your tic-tac-toe application, okay? But for me, I did this one simple because I want to focus. We want to be able to show the top score. Who got the top score on tic-tac-toe? Okay? And then we want to submit our own score. So, in our code base, let's take a look at this. Oh, that's not the one. Someone pick a number for me. No, it can't be a negative number. 10,000, okay? Say 10,000. Someone pick a name for me. What?
Ray.
Gustav? Gustav? Is that how you spell it?
Sure.
Gustav, okay? So we're gonna demo that this bad boy works. Okay, so Gustav is about to have a score of 10,000, okay? According to the way this is written. So we're gonna log in. We're gonna submit our own score, and then we're gonna show the top scores by clicking this button. Did we not do this? Show top scores. Gustav is up here. So I just proved to you guys that this data was written to an API, because where does this data come from? What does this look like, guys? List. That's exactly what it is. So we opened up this application. We look, where's a good place to understand what our application does? Our constructor. We look at it. We look at the state that our application does. This, I would say, in my opinion, this component is, or this method is super important for just giving us a bit of clarity about what this application does or this component does. This is probably going to be one of the first things we look at in any component, is the constructor. So anyway, we see a list of games. Let's do Control D, and I proved to you, and the component did mount, right? What do we do here in the component did mount, guys? What does this look like? In component did mount, our lifecycle method, which fires as soon as the application loads, we make a fetch request to an API. When we fire this fetch request on line 18, we get the response, we parse it. Afterwards, we update the state of our application. Our application has a new piece of state, games. It's not a new piece of state, but the piece of state games in our application has been updated. Okay? I'm gonna prove to you guys that this works. So first, oh man, this is not inside. Okay, so we're just gonna show this.state.games.length, okay? And I save this. I expect that when we log in, we're gonna see 0 for a split second. And then afterwards, when the data comes back, we're going to see a number. So let's look at it. Let's log in. 10. Oh, that happened so quickly. Look here. It happens too quickly. Let's do it a better way. Okay, let's console log. Okay, I think that would be better. Console.log. This.state.games.length. Okay, let's prove. Did this wrong. What are you doing wrong here, guys? Oh, my bad. Thank you. Let's just have it be an empty array. That's cool. So for a second, it was 0. And then when our component did mount, the function fired, we made a request to get some data. After we got that data, we updated it. Does that make sense, guys? Okay, so let's get to it. So let me do some cleanup and close some of these so I can stay focused. Okay, so I'm gonna add it to our tic-tac-toe game, just like I want you guys to do. And we're gonna, what file we work on? Index.js, okay, index.js. Let's go ahead and look at our game component, and we're gonna have what? is signed in, we'll say that's false. Okay, guys? So then what are we gonna do here, guys? If this.state.game is signed in is equal to false, is equal to true, then what are we gonna do? We're gonna show what's below it, right? But this is bad syntax. I did this wrong, guys, my bad. This is what we wanna do, okay? This.state.is signed in and the name of the component. This is probably the better way to do this. It's a little bit confused. You guys, this is how I like doing it sometimes. Okay, so we refresh. Did I start the server? No, I didn't. Let's start the server.
You have a recording board?
Yes. Yep. So you guys can see that we no longer see the board by default, right? I'm doing this very simplified, okay? So we actually want some more complicated behavior than that. Let's just not show anything. No. Let's leave that. Board. We'll copy this. We'll also do the same thing right here. So I expect to see nothing, guys, now. To refresh the application, we see nothing because the user has failed to sign in. We cannot have a top score without a user signed in. I mean, we can let people submit without usernames, but that's bad. We should not do that, okay? If you go to facebook.com and we let someone create a post that has no name attached to it, we have all types of problems. Who created this post, etc. So this is a very, very common problem in programming. We need to authenticate our user. Who are they? What is their email? How can I find them, etc. Okay? So what's the next step in our lab, guys? We're gonna install a library to do Facebook login. So we'll just run npm install here. As that's running, let's go ahead and look at our example, guys. We can just go ahead and copy right here, basic button with styling. So we'll just copy this import. And we'll just copy this one right here. This component example they have. And what do we want to do here, guys? Do we always want to show it? Should we always show this? No. We should only show this when it's false. So we do the exact opposite. It's false, yeah, if it's false. Okay. We're going to place all this in here. And right now we're just hard coding this. And we're going to go ahead and comment out this because we don't have these two functions. What do these look like, guys? What are these things right here? These are properties. These are properties we're sending to this component. And we don't have one defined right here, component right here. So we're just going to comment out because we don't want it to crash. Oh, I didn't start the server. npm start. I'm not sure if I can. Can I? I think I can. Because I'm inside the curly braces. The commenting is a little bit confusing. Okay, so we can see that it works, right? User is not logged in. We click a button. We say that the app is not set up. So we need to do more, guys. We need to now create a new application on Facebook. So we go to developer.facebook.com. Guys, I'm moving quick, guys. Pay attention. I'm moving quick. We go to add new app, guys. Add new app down here. Okay, so what do you want to call this one, guys? We'll call it tic-tac-toe top winner. Okay, we'll create tic-tac-toe top winner. We'll create app ID. Is this not working? What's going on? Why is this button working, guys? Tell me. Damn you, Facebook. Why is this working? This is confusing. If I use what? I should be able to use many apps. So to say tic-tac-toe. I don't know. Why is this working? Create app ID. Doesn't that work? Tic-tac-toe. Come on. Oh my God. Fuck. Tic-tac winner. It's called. Maybe the name's too long. Sometimes forms aren't prompting us correctly, guys. See how confusing this is? I need to know why what's going wrong. This is when we ask you guys to prompt the user. We're not joking. This is something we need to do. I don't know what's going on here. Has the API request failed? I'm not sure. Why the fuck is this working?
Does it have anything to do with you having thrown out the last two things?
No, we haven't even gotten to that point yet. We're just trying to create a new account on Facebook to build a new app with. I did this last night. Add a new app. Tack, tip, toe. Now I'm confused, guys.
Maybe you have to finish set up the tic-tac-toe. No, cancel. Finish set up that. Set that, and then you can create another one, I guess.
What else do I need to do?
Turn it off or delete it, I don't know.
Now you can create a bunch of these. I've done a bunch of these. Guys, we got some technical problems, guys. This is from Facebook. Blame those guys. Don't blame me. What the fuck? God damn it.
I'm trying that.
It doesn't work for you either?
Yeah.
Fuck. Okay, fine. I'm just gonna show you. I'm gonna show you guys. We're gonna pretend that this works, and we're gonna pretend that we have an app ID. Okay. I'm sorry, guys. I really want to show that. I'm not really sure what's going on here. So we can just click this number right here. This is our app ID. Okay. We hop back over to our code. We paste our app ID in. We save. Okay. So now when we hop over here, we get a bunch of warnings. We click it, log into with Facebook, and it seemed like something worked, but it didn't actually work all the way. The reason why that is because we haven't given this component the properties it needs. Okay, it needs a special property. This component, long story short, if we read our documentation, we can see that we need a response to Facebook. We need to give it a callback. What's a callback, guys? What's the callback? But what is that? What is response to Facebook? It's a function. Remember how we talked about many different types of functions there are? A callback is a special type of function. This function fires is used as, hey, hold on to this function for me. We tell Facebook to hold on to this function. Okay, hold on to this. When we get our API request back, fire it. Okay, that's what it is. So we'll copy this this function right here. We'll paste it to the top of our file along with our other utility functions. And then we're simply going to pass this function to the callback prop. Okay, we're going to give this function to our Facebook login component. Does that make sense, guys? Everyone understand what happened on line 159? You guys understand what happened? So this component, Facebook login, right? Let's comment out this property right here. Okay. We refresh. We click login. Something popped up, but I don't know. We don't know. We're not really sure what happened, right? It doesn't seem that the user has successfully signed in yet. So if we look at our documentation, we can see that the expectation here for this Facebook login component of React is that it's going to receive a property called callback. It needs to have a property called callback. And by the name of this property, we understand a lot, right? We understand that this is going to take a function. It needs to have a function as its as the property right here. Okay? So we do that right here. And we could actually do it much simpler. Console.log. We got called back. Okay, we save. We jump back to our app. We click login with Facebook. and it fired down here, right? So that's not good enough. Okay, we need something better. Let's go back to the function that we defined, response Facebook, and remember this is just a function. Response Facebook is a function, right? We define it up here. Okay, so we save it, we refresh, we click login with Facebook, and we can see that it works. When this function was fired, it was given an argument. This argument was of what data type, guys? Object. So where is this coming from? This callback function, response Facebook, let's just name it. Let's give it a better name. Callback passed to Facebook login component. Okay? I promise you this is what's going on, okay? I'm so okay with this, okay? And now let's go ahead and do this right now, okay? Now we go ahead and name the function inside the console log, man. There's no confusion here, guys. This is where this console log is gonna come from. So we refresh, we log in, and we can see that, what does it say? Callback passed to Facebook login component, right? So on line 8, after we successfully logged in, this function defined on lines 7 through 9 was fired. And when it was fired, that component, Facebook login component, gave it an argument. You can imagine it did something like this. The object to pass. It did something like that. It called the function, and then it just gave it an argument. And then that argument went to where? It went to response. And then on line 8, when line 8 executed, we simply console logged this object. This parameter. The response is a parameter. It doesn't have to be an object, but it usually is an object, okay? It's usually an object that we're dealing with. Why? Guys, why do we like objects? Why do we like objects, guys? Exactly. It's very easy to manipulate an object. It's very easy to get the certain data we want. Maybe I don't want Loy's email. Maybe I just want his name. Maybe I just want his picture. I don't know. You guys will notice, I saw this mistake happen yesterday. Not every API will be different. The object it gives us will have different keys. Ray, I remember you ran into that one, right? When we got the movies, right? Inside the movies, the object it gave us, the data we were looking for, was inside of results. And then when we implemented the genres, right? It wasn't inside of results anymore. It was inside of genres. Remember? Yeah. So we got to look at the response object, guys, and look at this, and we'll find some data that we're interested in. Access token and signed in requests and user ID will be important later on. Whenever we figure out how to save data to our own server and build our own API, we're going to be using this data more efficiently, right? So that we can do more complicated things. But anyway, in the context of this application building today, we're just going to copy this now. Okay? Because we realize that we need to do something more. Once the user signs in, what do we want to switch, guys? When have we gotten this data back? What do we want to switch? Right? We want to do something with this, right? We want to hide one button, the Facebook login button, and we want to show the game. So let's copy that function, and let's define it in the context of a component. Okay? So what? Okay, my bad. This is inside the render method, so we need to do outside of the render method. Okay, so that looks good. Now we're gonna say this.setState. What's some state that we might want to have, guys? Is logged in is one of them. That's what you're right, Phil. Is signed in. We're gonna set that to true. Okay. Actually, this should be more complicated. It should be if response.code is equal to 200. Then we do this, because sometimes the API request will fail. It probably should look something like this. But that's not what we're going to do right now. We just keep it simple. Okay. So we say this.setState is signed in is true. And we'll say current user current user is a new object. We'll say first name. What does this look like? I forgot what it looks like. All right, let's not make current user an object. One day we're gonna need to do that, guys. I want you guys to know how to do that because we need to know a lot of things about our current user. But right now we're just gonna keep track of their first name. So we'll say response dot. What am I looking for, guys? Response dot first name. Should response dot first name work, guys? What should work? Okay, response dot name. I think that's a good one. I think that's a winner. Afterwards, let's just console log our state. Let's just see what we have. Console dot log. This dot state. This dot state. We save. Okay, I fucked something up. What is this? How's this change, guys? Yes. Thank you. Okay, so we save. We log in. Oops. Log in. So once you guys log in once, it has even better behavior. It automatically will log you. Actually, my bad. I fucking said that wrong. Right here, there's something called auto load. Right? This thing is smart enough to know if we've already signed in. This component is magical, man. It's almost magical. If we do auto load equals true, or by default, guys, when we do auto load equals a boolean, we can just do auto load like that too. Anything that we pass in, hello, when this gets to the child component, it will say like this dot props, this dot props dot HWLLO equals true. That will be true. That will be correct. Okay. So just know that auto load we can do right here this way, or auto load this way. And this is only for true. There's no other situations in which React allows us to do this. Only for booleans that are true. Okay? We can shorthand it. So these are two the exact same things. So let's save it. And we see that we're going to auto log in. Okay? Let's save this one. We're going to auto log in. Okay? Let's disable both of them. Lines 160 and 161. Oh, my bad.
Can you bang just to make it false?
No, it only works for true. So we can see that when we do what, guys? What are we doing on line 161, guys? What are we doing? No, but what does this line of code 161 tell you?
Or stay logged in?
No, in the context of our application, what is line 161 doing? Yes, we're passing a property. What is this property called? Okay, what's the value of this property? Exactly, that's what we're doing, and we're going to do this a lot, guys. Okay, that's why I want to keep hammering in this point. We need to pass properties. We need to do all types of complicated stuff through properties. Okay, so let's save it, and then it automatically loads. So now we've successfully logged in, guys, because our React Facebook login component was smart enough to know. So now what else can we do? So let's go ahead and let's indicate to the user they're signed in. Right now, like we did sign in, but I'm not really sure that I'm signed in, right? So we can do this dot state dot, what do you call it? First name? What do we call it, guys? I forgot what I call it. I'm gonna prove it, guys. I'm sorry, okay, we call it first name. I think that works, right? This dot state dot first name. So let's just see, we should see a name somewhere. There we go. So I know that I'm signed in now. Okay? Okay, so the objective of the app in the lab, you guys will see that the lab says like send top score. There's no real way to score tic-tac-toe. So what we want to see you guys do is send how long it took to complete a game. When the game's, I'm going to do it this way. When the component loads, we start a timer. The time starts going, okay? When the game is completed, we automatically send a request to the API to update our score. And the score will be how long it took us to do this. Okay? So, question, Kwa, talk to me.
Is it to win or to lose?
Just to complete a game. I'm gonna make this simple. I felt like it wasn't great, the documentation, but we're gonna do something very simple, okay? First off, I wanna say timer. Guys, we want to see how long it takes a player to complete a game, okay? So we're just going to add a timer right here. We make this as simple as possible. We're going to start off our timer with, if we time something, what number should we start with? 0, okay? We save. Right there. So you got a 0 right there. I want this to change, okay? We want this number to change. So, what is a good place to do something when our application loads? What's a good place to execute code when our application loads? Where's a good place to stick this data? Component did mount. Okay, so we'll say set interval. Do you guys remember this thing? You guys remember this bad boy?
Yeah.
This bad boy is useful. What's the first argument? It's a function. And we'll say this dot set state. Come on, I can't type for shit. Timer is this dot set state dot timer plus 1. How often we want this to fire? Every 1 second. Okay, we got a problem right here, guys. What's our problem here? Oh, we're forgetting our parentheses. I'm confused. What's going on, guys? This dot set state. Pink. Orange. Set. Okay, my bad. Yeah, outside. So we see this timer is in fact working, right? The timer is actually every single second we're kicking it up. Okay, so now we get a timer. We can prove that our application has a understanding of time. When did it start? Is it moving, etc. So now the expected behavior is that when we play, when in the event, what happens, guys? In the event a user wins, we want to do something, okay? Right? So can we confirm that we know when a user wins? Yes, we do know when a user wins. So what code is executing this right here? You have to take some thinking, right? So I'm just copy winner right here. Winner. I can see that winner is coming from winner right here, and then winner on line 126 is coming from a function call, calculate winner, right? So we'll go ahead and find this function. And we're looking over it, and we can see that on line 24, this is basically where we can determine whether or not someone has won. That simple. But our function, notice where our function is. It's on line 7 through 26. Nope, 7 through 29. It's on line 7 through 29. Yeah? Right?
Are you just holding shift to add this selection?
Say again?
Are you just holding shift to add that selection?
Yes, I hold shift and then I clicked. Yeah. So there's a couple different ways to do this, guys. We can just move this component into the problem that we're about to have is that in the case that we do have a winner, right? What data do we need here? What's the end objective whenever a user has won? To make an API request, right? So secondly, when I demoed, what two pieces of data did we tell our API? We told it who the user was, what the score was. Remember we did Gustav, and then we picked a number. Remember that? We hard-coded the test that it worked. The API did in fact work, right? So I think the easier approach would be, I'm gonna do both ways. Fuck it, I'll show you guys both ways. We'll do, we can pass this, in order to get this function to work correctly, we can just pass it some more data. We'll say username, and then we'll say score, okay? So if we pass it 2 additional pieces of data, what do we need to do here? Don't we need to pass it more data? This dot state dot first name, right? And then this dot state dot timer. That also works, right? So we just copy this whole thing. We'll pop over to the other instance. We don't actually have to do it here, but we're gonna do it just in case, okay? So we'll copy over this, and then in the case someone has 1, let's just check what arguments we have. Console.log, username, score is username. We'll do one more time. For score. Okay, so the expectation now, right, is that our calculate winner function is going to be called many times. Okay, it's going to be called many, many times. But line 24, 25, and 26 can only be executed in the event that someone has won. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move around a couple times. And we don't see username or score right here. Right? We don't see it. But I expect now if X goes in the top left, we should see that console logged. And we did in fact see that console logged. So we passed. We could have looked at this dot state. We could have moved calculate winner to our game component. That's one approach. Or when we calculate winner, we can call it with additional arguments. Does that make sense, everyone? So the problem was that calculate winner, right? The initial problem was that when we think about the application is that we want to know when a user wins, we want to perform an API request, right? And then we got to thinking, how do we know when a user has won in terms of the code? How do we know when a user has won? We dived deeper, we poked around a little bit, and we found a function called calculate winner. This function calculate winner performs some calculations. And it said, hey, this is one situation. If this situation occurs right here, this if conditional, that means someone has won, right? So now we know exactly how can we determine when a user has won in order to shoot off a post request, in order to fire a post request, right? Now we know exactly it's a line of code right here. So when we took a step back to think about our application as a whole, we saw that calculate winner is called a utility function. This function does not belong to any class. We're gonna actually have a bunch of these, okay? For those of you who want to know about utility functions, this is gonna happen a lot. There's gonna be a certain type of function that this one doesn't belong to any component. We use this everywhere. Formatting money is one of those types of functions. Format it correctly. But anyway, so on line 24, 25, and 26, this is a situation that someone has won. And before we can fire off a API request to tell our API who the user is that won and what their score was, this calculate winner function needs to have that data, right? And the reason why we pass it as an argument is because we don't have this dot state. If I do this dot state and we do a winning solution again, it's going to complain. It doesn't know what this is. So the one approach that I just showed you guys is when we call the calculate winner function, we can just give it some more arguments. There's nothing wrong with doing that. It doesn't make us bad programmers. That is one technique. We could also just copy the entire function. We could copy it, move it to our game component, right? We can just delete this. We could also delete squares if you want to be realistic. Then we simply say const squares. What am I doing here, guys? Yes. Const squares. I'm doing this right here. This dot state dot squares. And I'm doing the same thing. Username. What's the other one we want? Score. I'm confused right now. Where did I get the score from? This dot state score, right? This dot state the timer. Yes, thank you. This dot state dot timer. So we refresh, and then we find a winner. Oh, we don't even fire this function yet. It's impossible for this function to be fired yet. We're never going to see it work. Okay, so let's fire it. Let's fire it In what situation? Now this one takes a little bit more thinking. When do we want to fire this function? I think we just do this dot calculate winner. I think this works. Now we can just delete. We can just delete these two additional arguments, okay? Matter of fact, we can delete all of them. Because why? Because now inside of our calculate winner function, we can just call this dot state. When that function is not inside the body of a component, if it's not inside of a component, then we don't have this dot state. But when the function is inside of a component, it can much more easily access state, that component state. So now we can just do this dot calculate winner. My expectation is that this will work just fine. Winning indexes. What line is that? 145. All right, guys, we're debugging. 145. Squares is this dot state dot squares. Interesting. I think this is the one argument that we do need to pass, guys. Yes. The reason why this dot calculate winner needs to be passed, the squared argument, is because we actually updated it. So let's just delete the two additional arguments that we passed to clean up our code. And now the calculate winner behaves pretty much the same. Come on. Squares right here. So we delete that, right? That look good? I think this will work. Okay, so that seems to have worked. Right? Have I lost you guys? Are you guys with me?
We are lost.
You guys are lost? A little bit lost?
I don't know.
So just know that calculate winner, the objective here is that whenever someone wins the game, we need to fire a request. We want to update our API. So right now we're figuring out how to determine when a user has won. That's the first thing, right? And then when we determine when a user has won, we realize that in order to fire this API request to our API, we needed some additional data. We needed to know how long the user has been playing, their score, which is their score, as well as their first name. There were two different ways to do that. Because originally, our calculate winner was not a method on the component, the rack component, we had to pass it additional data. When we call that function, we need to give it different data, right? But that was not, we wanted to pull that function into the body of this component. And because of that, now we could do exactly, inside this calculate winner, inside of the game component, we can do this.state.username, this.state.timer, and then we can fire the API requests. And then now we have data. Now we have this data whenever we know that someone has won. Okay? I know it's a lot to take in, but you guys are gonna read the lab and think about it step by step, okay? Okay, we're moving slowly. We got 15 minutes left. We need to get going. Okay, guys. So now, guys, when we make API requests, do they happen instantly? So what can we do to make API requests? So we just need to do async. We need to make our function asynchronous. Now I'm going to copy some code over, and I want you guys to copy it too, okay? This is a more complicated way of making a request. This is just a more complicated request. That's all this is. You guys, I could not do this by myself. If I deleted this, I would not know what to write. Okay, I'm telling you that right now. Just like I don't know how to define a random element in an array. I don't remember how to do that. The expectation here is that when you guys learn, when you guys just know what type of request you need to make, you can just Google it and get an example. So we're gonna copy this.
So how do you Google in the beginning?
We'll just say how to make a post request with data. Yeah. How to make a post request data. Yeah, how to make a post request, JavaScript. JavaScript, make post request. You can see a bunch of different ways. There's like a 1,000 different ways to make some requests. There's a bunch of different ones we can make, okay? We already give you guys one. So basically, did I close that? I'm confused. Where'd it go? Where we at? Fuck. Okay, here we are. So, in the event that someone has won, we're gonna fire a request. Okay, that looks good. Why does this think that this is not an asynchronous function? Does this work? Okay, that works. That also works. So, we're going to copy this in, and then we're going to Gustav. What should we put here, guys? What should we put in Gustav? This.state.first name, correct. Or, we'll just do it that way, fine. This.state.first name. Okay, that works. And we'll do the same thing for this.state.timer. This.state.timer is going to be our score, guys. Okay? We're just doing this simple. Okay? Okay. So, in order to prove that this is my most recent request, we're going to add a color. I'm going to say, what's a pretty color, guys? Lavender. I like lavender. I use pink a lot. I use that one a lot. Okay, so afterwards, what are we gonna do, guys? We're gonna console.log response. Okay, we console.log response. Our winner is now. We did something wrong here, guys. Why is this here? We did something wrong, guys.
You will fetch the data. Now you not have a win, so the data not fetched.
Okay, fine. So let's just see whether or not we can fire the API request, okay? Let's just see whether or not the API request fires. Okay, so let's play a game. And we can see that when someone won, there was an API request. It worked. It gave us a response of a success. Why did this fire so many times? That's right. Okay. So let's look at our console log, and we can see our response right here. We got a status code of 200. Okay. So now I'm going to show you one more step, guys. There's another way to test our API. We don't always have to use our console tools. We don't always have to console log. We just use Postman. Okay. And we're going to use the document. This API is documented. It's not documented well, but it's documented, okay? So now if we look at ftw-highscores.herokuapp.com/blah, blah, 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 and we do a GET request, click send, what should we see, guys? You should see this.state.first name plus lavender, right? And let's see whether or not that works. See 3 results right here. And the score is it took 65 seconds for this to occur, for this one to occur in this one situation. Right? So now, guys, I want you guys to create a list, okay? Show me who the winner is. And show me how long they took to win. I'm gonna see all of them from this API. And this is, we've done this so many times, I feel like I shouldn't demonstrate this. Can we do this, guys? Can we make an API request to get some data from the API? And then when we get that data, we update our state. And then when we update our state, it will behave a little bit differently. Who wants to see that? Who wants to see me list the data that we just got in our response? Okay. So now we'll create a new component over here. Not a new component, we'll add a little bit more logic. We'll say this.state.highscores.map score. I did this wrong. Score. We're gonna do return what? Div. We're gonna return a div. This is gonna have what in it? Let's look at one of our response objects. One of our response objects will have player. So we do score.player. One in score. Damn, this fucking naming sucks. Score.score. Okay? So how can we get high scores? How can we have high scores in our state? Okay, so let's define a new component. Let's say get high scores. Yeah, why not? So we define a new component, get high scores. What do you do here? It's gonna fire an API request. So let's just go ahead and copy an example, one that we already have. Ah, fuck, we don't need to copy this. It's so simple. We'll say const high scores, const high scores equals await fetch. What can I stick in here, guys? This API right here. Okay. So now we get that. What do we need to do now, guys? We need to parse. I don't like the name of this. Response. Okay. Now we need to look at our API. Where is this data located in this response object? Right? So let's just console log right now. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's just see what we have. And I'm gonna fire this one time. Let's just fire this one time, guys, when our component mounts, okay? Now we have a different error. Okay, so we also need to have a sensible default. High scores is an empty array. Okay, so we're logged in. The timer's going. Let's look at our console log, and we see that, where's this JS whatever coming from? I don't remember. That's why I put in a random string so that it cannot be copy pasted. No one's gonna have a variable by this name. So I'm just gonna copy this, jump over to the code editor, Control F, paste. So I can see that this console log came from line 97. This object on the right of our literal string came from somewhere. It didn't just appear out of nowhere. Where did that come from? It came from this variable called JSON data. Where did JSON data come from? It came from awaiting the JSON parsing of a response object. Where did that response object come from? It came from an API, which we made a request to. So there it goes, very quickly. So let's look at this object. What's it got in it that we want? It's got something in it we want. Why did we make the request there? Because we want some data. Every API is different. This object that it gave us did not have a results key. It did not have a genres key. It has an items key. And inside this items key, what do we have? An array of games. So let's work harder, or let's work smarter. Let's go ahead and get our JSON data.items, and then we're gonna do now. We're just gonna update the state of our application. So we save, and now we can see this. Right? This all happened very, very quickly, guys. It happened in a second. Okay? The application loads, we refresh, we make a request to the API for some data, we get that data back, we parse it, and we get not the entire, it gave us a whole object back, but we did not want the whole object, we just wanted an array. Okay, it's such a common pattern. And then when we had that in state, we updated the state with that array. So there was another conditional logic here. We mapped over all our high scores and we simply rendered something. Does that make sense, guys? You guys with me? So we switch this a little bit. Yeah. So that looks good. I fucked this one up. There we go. All right, so that's the lab for today, guys. Do you have any more questions? All right, guys, get going.